Hello and welcome to another episode of Trash to Track. Now in this episode I'm going to be looking at this Bachmann Class 66 that's been sent to me by Rob, who says that it was running and then it started to run erratically. So he did take it apart and have a look, but he got stuck, so he sent it to me. There's one of the drive shafts. It's obviously come loose. There's that's the detail pack, but in there is a little plastic container with all the screws in it, so that's good. Rob's managed to keep all the screws. It looks like the bogie retaining screws are in there, and then those bogies are loose, so gently pushing it out from behind the polystyrene tray. There's another drive shaft taped to the underside of the fuel tank, but both bogies are loose. There's another screw there that's come loose from somewhere. I think that's a body securing screw. So let's have a look at this and see if we can get it back to running order now. I'm going to remove this sellotape that's holding this other drive shaft on the bottom of the fuel tank here. I'll get rid of that. Here is the, like I said, the drive shaft is just there. So at least there doesn't appear to be any parts missing at the moment. So I'm just going to remove all this old tape now. That's good, that's not left any residue, so that's good. And the body shell is loose. Well, everything's loose on the model. The body shell is loose, the bogies are loose. Even the die-cast weight and chassis plate are loose. So all the screws have been removed. The model's DCC fitted. It's got an ESU decoder in it. And I'm going to unplug the light units just to get the body shell out of the way, so we can concentrate on the main event. There is a lot of wiring in these models, and just by sheer coincidence, while I remove this decoder and everything, somebody called Lee sent me the exact same model to repair as well, so I'll have a look at that later on in the video. So it's 2 for 1. I'm going to remove this sellotape that Bachmann had put on to keep the wires in check. I'll replace this later, but I need to remove this to allow the wires some flex so that I can move some stuff about. There's the other bogie securing screw that was loose already, and obviously the drive shafts aren't in this, and like I said, look, it's all loose. Everything has been removed, all the screws have been taken off, so not to worry, we'll have a look. So I'm going to remove these plastic peg type things that hold the wires onto the PCB. All the other wires are soldered on apart from the motor wires and the pickup wires. So I'll take the pickup wires out, and then we're going to drop the bogies down and have a look and service and re-lubricate both bogies, and then hopefully get it put back together. So again, that sellotape, this end is holding the wires in place. So I'm just checking there. Now, I checked there on the motor to make sure the drive shaft cups were okay, which they were, but I didn't actually check the ones on the worm gear, and that's going to come back and bite me in the arse later on. But I'm going to remove, I tried to remove that plastic tab there that holds the motor wires in place, but that was stuck. So I didn't want to force it, so I got the battery connector with some wires on and just touched it on the terminals to make sure that the motor spun and was running freely, which it was. There doesn't appear to be anything wrong with the motor at all. So that's good news. So just tapping it on. I know you can't hear it because of the voiceover, but the motor was spinning and running as it should. So I'm going to open this up now, and we're going to have a look, make sure all the screws are here, and if there's any missing, we're going to have to try and source them. So what we're looking for is the other bogie securing screw, which is there, 4 long body securing screws, and 4 smaller silver screws that hold the die-cast weight to the plastic chassis block. And kudos to Rob, they all look like they're here. There are no screws missing at all, which is very good. That will save me having to source any. So the body securing screws I'm just going to put back in the holes in the body shell so I don't lose them and I know where they are. And I'm going to sort the other screws out and start by refitting these smaller silver screws on through here. They go through these tiny holes near the motor flywheel, and that will secure or re-secure that die-cast weight to the plastic chassis. So I'm just going to do that. I do opposite corners just so it tightens up evenly. So there we go, there's another one going in. So now that's been resecured, let's have a look at one of the bogies. Now I'm only going to focus the overhaul on one of the bogies because they're both identical. So if you follow the example, you can do this on both bogies. Now looking at it, it's not too bad. It is a little bit dirty. The wheels could do with a clean. But what does surprise me is this model doesn't have all-wheel pickup. It doesn't pick up from the front wheel. It only picks up from the driven. All wheels are driven, but it only picks up from 4 wheels per bogie, which I find surprising, to be honest. So I'm going to remove these 2 screws, which allows me into the gearbox area, and I'll be able to remove the worm gear and clean all in here. That lubrication is quite old and manky, so I'm going to clean all this out. Now I didn't notice it at the time, but that bearing cup on the end of that worm gear is split. And I don't know why I didn't notice it. And I'm just pointing out there the wheels that collect current. It's the rear 4 wheels that collect current. But yeah, I didn't notice that drive cup was split until after I overhauled the bogies. That's a homemade coupling, so I'll keep that aside and refit that, ready for when I send it back. The bogie frame just unclips. Just a little bit of pressure with a flat bladed screwdriver will allow it to come out. And to my surprise, the actual gear train is very, very dry. There's a lot of hair in it, as you can see there. But where the worm gear was, the grease had started to solidify and go horrible and manky and black. But the actual drivetrain itself was very, very dry. The only evidence of grease is that factory grease just there. There's nothing, it's not leaving any residue on my fingers or anything. So I don't think this has ever been opened up since it left the factory 10 or 15 years ago. The pickups are quite dirty, they could do with a clean. So I've got a cotton bud here with some meths on it, and I'm just going to clean all these brass parts. Make sure that the pickups are nice and clean. I'm also going to clean all this area. You can see the dirt accumulating on the end of the cotton bud there. I'm just going to get in there and get as much of this old grease and oil out as I can. It is strange that the top here is so greasy and oily, but the actual drivetrain underneath is clean. Very, very strange. I'm also going to clean all the wheels. I clean the wheel treads and the wheel backs, because don't forget, the pickups press on the backs of the wheels, so everything needs to be nice and tidy and clean. Otherwise you'll end up with bad electrical conductivity. And you can see the dirt on the end of that cotton bud there. These wheels were quite filthy. So this 66 has definitely got some mileage on it. So everything was cleaned up. I cleaned all the axles, all the bearings. I even cleaned the inside of the gearbox cover. Get rid of all that old manky grease. And there was quite a lot of it. Both bogies were like this. Both bogies were very greasy and manky around the worm gear, but actually dry and clean on the drivetrain. The bogie frame itself just needs a light dusting down to remove some fluff and some hair. And then, now everything's cleaned, I set everything aside to let the meths evaporate fully, and then we'll be ready to reassemble the bogie. So here are all the parts. Now, to put the wheels back in, the wheels have bearings, and the bearings actually clip fit into the plastic bogie moulding. So if you line them up correctly, they are just a push fit, but at least the bearings are there. The bearings push fit into the bogie frame, and make sure you line up the gears correctly, just like so. And make sure as well, while you do this, that you don't bend any of the pickups by accidentally catching them. And when the wheels are in place, make sure that all 4 pickups are touching the wheel backs as they should. So I'm going to add some of this Hobby Lube PTFE grease onto the gears. I didn't actually have my Lebel 106 with me today, so I'm going to use this as an alternative, which is fine. This is just as good. So I run a light bead across the entire drivetrain. I then use my pin dropper and put some oil on all those axles, especially around those bearings, because that will help with the smooth running. And then once I'm satisfied that it's lubricated correctly, the bogie frame can be clipped back in place, making sure it's the correct orientation. And I'm just doing it there, and then I'm going to, just making sure it's the right way around. and then that just clip fits into place. If you've done it correctly, it should just snap down, and there we go. That's the bogie overhauled, and I'm just pushing it along with my hands. That will help spread that grease and lubrication through the entire drivetrain. I put the worm gear back on, and then add a small amount of oil to the bearings either side of the worm gear, again using this Fleischmann pin dropper that I've had for many years. And then add a small amount of lubrication to the worm gear itself, a little bit of oil and a little bit of this grease. Just add a bit into the gear teeth there. And then what I do now is I get one of the drive shafts to turn that, to spread the lubrication, and this is when I realise the drive shaft cup is cracked, because I've just seen it, and I don't know why I didn't check it before, but I didn't. So I'm going to just wipe that grease off there that we put on, and yeah, it's cracked. So no wonder when Rob was running this, the drive shafts came out and it was running really lumpy. It had probably lost virtually all of its torque, and the drive shafts were loose and fell out. So I did look at these. I think, well, I'm going to have to repair that or replace it. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to strip the other bogie down to make sure that's, well, hopefully it's not the same, but I bet it is. I bet that one's cracked as well. And it got me to thinking, Lee, who sent me the exact same modelling, I wonder if it's happened to that one. So we'll have a look at that as well. So I'll just get the second bogie now and unscrew the top. Whoops, I get the screws out. Gearbox cover off, and yeah, this drive cup is also split. So there's a big problem. No wonder this model was running badly. So I'm going to try and repair these, and the reason being is I contacted Bachmann and went on their spares website. They would only sell me a complete bogie for £25. £25 each, so this repair would have cost 50 quid on top of the service charge. So what I'm going to try and do is repair these with two-part epoxy resin. I'm going to glue the bearing cups back onto the shafts and put a coat around the bearing cup so it holds it steady. And this is it. This is actually about an hour later when the glue has fully cured. Both bearing cups have been repaired and they are very, very strong. So I'm hoping that saved a lot of money. And another problem I found with the second bogie was that the pinion gear, or the pinion that the gear sits on, hadn't been fully pushed through the bogie frame. It was only half in. Now the gear did spin, but this should go through and align with both holes. Some gentle manipulation with my needle nose pliers got the pin through where it should be, and now the gear is sitting correctly and not at an angle. So, as I said, the second bogie was overhauled exactly the same as the first. And I've now put the worm gears back in and clipped the gearbox covers on the top. The drive shafts are in place, and there appears to be plenty of torque on those cups. Now they've been glued with epoxy resin. I would have used super glue, but super glue is not suitable. Super glue is a good glue, but it's not made for torque. So if you'd have glued those bearing cups with super glue, they more than likely would have broken again. So here I am threading the pickup wires back through the body die cast of the main chassis, and then with the PCB screws removed, which was quite handy because they were removed when I got the model, it allows me access to the motor flywheels, and I can guide the drive shafts into the drive shaft cups that are embedded in the end of the motor. Line it up, and then the bogie top sits through that screw hole, and now the bogie can be resecured using one of the screws. Don't be tempted if you ever do this to try and lift it up, because if you lift the model up now and the bogie falls out, it will disconnect that drive shaft again. So I'm just putting the screw in now that holds the bogie in place, and then I'll do exactly the same to one on the other side. And then once both drive shafts are fully in and the bogies are secure, I can use the last two remaining screws to secure the PCB back to the die-cast chassis block. Then I'm going to reconnect the wires. They go in from the top And the grey one, as you can see here, these are pickup wires, go onto this part of the PCB. If this was my model, and as you'll see when I look at Lee's 66, I do actually solder these, but because this is Rob's, I'm going to use those plastic connectors again, just to hold them in place. And on this model, they seem to be very tight and do hold the wires where they should be. So having tidied that rat's nest of wires up, I give it a quick test with a blanking plate and the battery. And the model is running, those drive cups are holding. But we'll do a haulage test and a torque test with it in a moment. One of the things I did with the chassis was hold it upside down and test it with the battery, putting my fingers on the wheels to give resistance, but there was no slipping whatsoever. The last thing to do on Rob's 66 was to reconnect the light units, obviously making sure that the red and black wires are connected correctly. And then the body shell was simply clipped home, and Rob's digital chip was replaced in the model. Once that's all done, just a quick test to make sure everything's working. This model is set to nighttime running mode, so the right hand headlights lit up. But all the lights are working correctly on both ends. And that is Rob's 66, hopefully fully overhauled, bearing cups repaired, cleaned, service, and is good for another few years running on Rob's layout. So this is Rob's 66, this is weathered version, which is lucky because it sets it aside from Lee's, because Lee's is in pristine. Now talking of Lee's model, Lee said he got this cheap second hand, but it was a very poor runner. And opening it up, I'm not surprised. There's a few wires detached in here. These plastic shrouds that hold the wires in place. There's a wire that's broken off the PCB altogether. But the plastic shrouds that hold the wires in place are missing. These were completely missing. They weren't loose in the model or anything. So I'm actually going to solder these wires. And this was also fitted with a Hatton's decoder. So I solder all the wires and service Lee's 66. This one didn't have split bearing cups, but I serviced the bogies and everything exactly the same way. And here it is running in the garden on the rake of tarmac and ARC hoppers. And Lee said it ran like a bag of spanners, but now it's been serviced and those wires are reconnected properly. It's actually running really nicely, as you can see, trundling around the garden with not a problem. The only thing I did find with this was that Hatton's decoder. I don't know if it's just a Hatton's decoder, but it was very, very tight in the DCC socket. So this one is Lee's model, and this was tested obviously outdoors and was given a clean bill of health. And here are both models, both 66405 with Rob's on the left and Lee's on the right. Still a good looking model despite its age, but it's just a bit of a coincidence I got exactly the same model sent to me at exactly the same time. If you've got an engine or anything you'd like to see repaired, DCC fitted or donated or featured on the channel, please email me at dansmodelrailways@gmail.com. I'm looking to getting it sent over, and who knows, it may even feature in an episode all of its own. So I'm going to leave you now with Rob's 66 doing some haulage tests on a long rake of Lima hoppers in the garden. This proves that those drive cups are working fine and there's no slippage whatsoever. And this was a very, very pleasant early October day. Plenty of sunshine. It's probably one of the last days I'm going to get to run the garden railway this year. But there are parts of the railway that do need maintenance, so I'll have to look into that. So thanks again for watching Trash to Track. Please like, share and subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.